What is going on, Scan fam? Welcome to another episode of the Cryptocurrent. We are here with Richard DeVaul. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, now Richard is the CEO and founder of XNET, a very innovative project in the blockchain space. Look forward to hearing some of your thoughts on the project, what you guys are doing, and some of those innovative things that you guys are creating.
Absolutely. And I'm a co-founder. Just to be clear, other awesome people founded XNET with me. So want to give them credit.
Awesome. So we'll get right into it. First, let's just kick us off with, can you tell us a little bit more about your background? Obviously, we heard a little bit of what you're kind of responsible for, but if in any more detail, just for our audience here.
Right. So my background, well, I've been doing, technically focused innovation leadership stuff now for, more decades than I'd like to think about it. Highlights of my resume include PhD work at the MIT Media Lab, building at that time bespoke wearable computers. And I was a cypherpunk before there was crypto. So imagine me with hair even longer wearing a black trench coat and a
Nice.
custom built wearable computer in the early 2000s, telling everybody how PKI was going to change everything, man. Started a company, got wiped out in the Great Recession of 2008, ended up joining a secret research team at Apple, developing new hardware-focused features across the entire Apple product line. Ended up leading that team, jumped ship to Google X in the very early days of Google X. You might have heard of self-driving cars and large language models and all that stuff. That all came from Google X. And ended up becoming CTO of Google X. And among other projects I worked on at Google X was Project Loon, which I would argue is the very first decentralized wireless project focused on LTE. So we actually put LTE cell towers in the stratosphere on balloons that look kind of suspiciously like that Chinese spy balloon that came down recently. It's like, I wonder where they got that design. Like, no, seriously. And that project, by the way, was a technical success. It worked beautifully. It was a market failure because we built the wrong kind of network. We built a data network and not a mobile network, and I can explain why that's relevant to XNET in a bit. I've also been in crypto from the early days. Got really excited. The Bitcoin white paper was great, but Ethereum is what really kind of got me into this, actual programmable, decentralized, not just money, but smart contracts and so forth. I became an Ethereum dev and actually tried to get Google/Alphabet into the crypto space in 2017, 2018. Was told by the CFO that if I did anything to get Alphabet regulated as a bank holding company, that she was going to kill me. And I think she meant that literally. She was literally going to kill me. So I've been involved in, left Alphabet in 2018, been involved in projects in both kind of in the climate change space, which is something I'm really passionate about, and also crypto. And then about a year ago, started XNET with my amazing co-founders, who were also, multi-decade veterans in startups and building stuff in mobile technology. And they were doing a project with another company that, had a token and all that, and they were providing technology. And I was like, hey guys, I don't think these other folks are doing it right, but we could do it right. We could build a real, true mobile network from the ground up, the right thing. We could use crypto incentives, and it could change everything because you all know that your phone service sucks. Like, everybody listening to me right now has completely crappy phone service. Like, you know it, right? And why does it suck? It's because there's been no meaningful competition in that space for 30 years. Spectrum monopolies have pushed everybody out. So you pay tons of money for a really crappy service. And we at XNET, we're going to fix that because of CBRS, because of blockchain, because of a bunch of things that I can explain. But we're going to bring great mobile service to you. We're also going to give you the opportunity to participate in a really lucrative business, because the mobile business, the mobile phone sector here in the US, it's a $300 billion sector, right? No shit. Actually, it's probably like $320 billion or something like that, with 30% margins. Even companies as poorly run as the big telcos, who will remain unnamed, who've got tons of legacy, infrastructure and all this brick and mortar and all this stuff, they get 30% margins. I mean, think about that. Like, so huge opportunity, and that's why XNET is here. That's why I'm here, and that's why hopefully you're going to join us to help revolutionize, decentralize, and de-shitify mobile phone operations, not just here in the U.S. but eventually worldwide.
I think this is. I mean, thanks for this background information. Lots of really cool innovation that you're a part of, and we're super happy to have you here. Kind of guiding it directly down the path that you just brought us to is, what is XNET? I know you mentioned this huge market. What is XNET? Tell us a little bit about it.
Right.
And yeah.
So all of you who have something like this in your pocket, right? You have to have a mobile phone service provider. We call these MNOs that provide you service, right? If you don't have that, you don't got phone service. And all of these MNOs anywhere in the world historically have had these spectrum monopolies that kind of lets them exclude other players from competition. XNET is a brand new kind of mobile network operator, MNO, that uses here in the US a new open band, CBRS, this new spectrum that's available to us, so we can compete with these guys. And we're different in another important way, which is that every MNO to date has had to own a very expensive network infrastructure, cell towers and all this other equipment, right? So we don't own that, right? What we do is we actually sell that to other people and let them operate it for us. But it gives us this really powerful advantage, just like Uber transformed mobility by being a taxi company that didn't have to own and finance its taxis. We're a mobile network operator that's going to transform the mobile network business by not owning or financing what's called the RAN. That's that physical infrastructure, right? So that's a really important piece. And the second thing that XNET is, it's decentralized, right? We are using blockchain incentives as a way to encourage you to come join us and run our equipment for us in return for the reward of our XNET token. So we are the first true mobile blockchain-powered mobile network. That's what XNET is, and we're here to make you a beneficiary of all of this, and to also improve the coverage you have, not by having you sign up for XNET as your mobile phone service provider. This is really important, but by using the existing plan you have. We're going to improve the coverage that you get through them, and then we're also going to take the money from that big evil telco that you're currently working with and use it to fund us, and then use it to also buy our token off the market and burn it, so that we return the value to the people who are operating our equipment.
Very cool.
That's a great, very, very cool breakdown. And in terms of like the actual coverage, so how will XNET provide 4G and 5G wireless networks?
Yes.
What is the business model kind of behind it?
That's right. So in the past, to build a cell phone network, you would have had to cover a huge area, a gigantic region in the United States, or maybe the entire country, which of course, that's a pretty expensive and complicated thing to do. And lots of areas where you provide coverage wouldn't give you much of a return on your investment. It would be great for the people who are there, but in terms of actual money, not so much. Now, I want you to imagine an analogy, right? Think about airlines. There are these global or United States level airline carriers. They have to provide service to everybody, including the routes that aren't very profitable. So think of that as being like a traditional mobile network. They've got to provide coverage to everybody. XNET, on the other hand, what we're doing is we're identifying key areas that have lots of people, have lots of demand, but for a bunch of reasons don't have great coverage right now. And then we're in those focused areas, we're building super high quality 4G, 5G network footprint, right? In these very focused areas. And then we turn that footprint on and we resell it back to the mobile network operators that really, really need it, right? So we don't have to build our network everywhere. We put our network just in those places. The mobile network operators really need it. And by the way, they really need it. This is a huge problem. The incumbents don't know how to build 4G. They certainly don't know how to build 5G. And by the way, 6G is coming, and all of these standards require smaller and smaller cells deployed more and more densely. And they're just at sea to do this stuff. So by building this focused coverage and selling it back to them, we get top dollar from them, And we only have to focus our efforts where it's really profitable. At the same time, we can then also use those revenues to deploy our networks where there is really no coverage at all, right? And connect the unconnected, because that's the other part of our mission. So putting this in perspective, right now, we are working with a tribe here in California, the Tule River Tribe, and we're in advanced discussions with them to provide coverage to their reservation, right? So this is this kind of dual model where we focus on these really high profitability areas, right, to pull money in, and then we can use that, of course, to pay our wonderful network providers, which is great, people who are helping us build out our network, and then also provide coverage in rural and remote areas that basically have no coverage whatsoever and no prospect of a conventional carrier coming in and helping them out.
Very cool. I'm curious, what do the network providers typically look like? Is it like businesses that are opting for this? Is it typical consumers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it turns out that if you want to build the kind of network footprint that an AT&T, a T-Mobile, a Verizon, an Orange, or Rogers wants to use, right? It's very hard to just do that with enthusiasts. Like we really want you to come and buy our equipment, go to our shop and deploy it. But when they come in, they say, okay, how do you guarantee me 99.95 SLA uptimes, right? So we work with enthusiasts, yes, and we work with professional installers and ISPs in these focused areas where we're guaranteeing coverage. And they give us actual uptime guarantees with their deployments. And so it's this hybrid approach. You can imagine that we've got kind of anchor coverage being provided by these professionals, right? Who are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy this equipment, to install it and run it for us, right? And then we have our enthusiasts, who, by the way, are getting fantastic incentives to go and deploy their radios in the same locations. And those enthusiast radios add capacity. They basically densify the coverage and allow more and more of these devices to connect, right? That's really important. Whereas the anchor coverage, it provides, coverage, making sure everywhere in this area is covered, and also some kind of base level of capacity as well. And that hybrid model we think is the future. It's going to be this combination of enthusiast and professional that will give us the most cost-effective, fastest, and best results.
Cool. I think that's a super unique and innovative approach. I'm curious, like, what's typically the return someone could expect?
Well, I mean, to be really clear, we issue a utility token, right? And there's a bunch of things about that. I cannot promise you a price and blah blah blah.
Of course.
However, modeling things out with reasonable assumptions, we think that you're going to get a payback in about 6 months. Now that being said, we want people who are with us for the long run. So unlike some other projects that are just kind of blown out tokens, helium, without really thinking about the long term, what we're doing is we have kind of a more well thought, I would say, emission schedule. And also we lock up a chunk of your tokens for a year. And that's because we want to know that you're in it for at least a year to help us get it going. Now, you'll still get a payback, we think, within 6 months or so, just with the emitted tokens. But again, we want to convince you that this is a long-term play, that you're in it for the long term. Just like me as a founder, like my tokens are locked for 3 years and then start to unlock over a 2-year period. So we're all in this to do this kind of long-term value creation. We're cathedral builders. We're not building Burning Man theme camp, right? And look, I love Burning Man. I think there's a bunch of DeFi projects that are and NFT projects that are basically like, hey, let's throw it out there and put it up and see who shows up and just get it all done. We're really thinking about a long-term process because, again, we see this as long-term value creation and building the next truly great mobile network operator that will compete with the likes of AT&T and British Telecom and Orange and so forth.
I know you mentioned helium. I know they have a similar model. Can you kind of explain the differences and maybe some of the gaps that you guys are filling based on their network that they tried to?
Absolutely. And to be really clear, we love helium. We think that helium is just freaking awesome. They are the pioneers. Like they proved that it was possible to, give token incentives to people and have them build a network, right? So we think helium is great. However, Helium had to kind of make it up as they went along, right? There was no roadmap for them. And so I think they understandably did a bunch of things that we, coming along as second movers, can learn from, right? So here are some really important points of difference. First of all, Helium was initially building an IoT network using a very low data rate, kind of very wide area technology called LoRaWAN, where it didn't really matter so much where the radios were, right? It really was not very sensitive to that. We are building, 4G, 5G, eventually 6G network footprint, which is incredibly sensitive, not just to the location, but just antenna orientation, right? So what we have to do is we have to take an approach where we're building in network clusters, and we're actually bringing in professionals to help RF plan, this anchor coverage. And that's not something that Helium ever was really focused on, was like, creating these dense, clusters of radios. Another thing is that it turns out that it's actually really weird to build a mobile network. Now, remember at the very beginning, I said that Project Loon at Google, with all these resources, we built this incredible network in the stratosphere, and nobody wanted it. It was amazing. It worked beautifully, but it literally took natural disasters on the ground to get our telco partners to turn it on. And as soon as that disaster passed, they turned it off. And it wasn't because the network didn't work. It's because it didn't have all the features of a mobile network as opposed to a data network. Mobile networks require things like SMS. In most places, there's the equivalent of E911, this enhanced location-based 911. There is a bunch of billing standards that are built into these networks, and the list goes on. Of course, voice service and so forth, right? And if you don't provide all of those features, AT&T doesn't want to roam on your network. Verizon doesn't want to roam on your network. In fact, no tier 1 operator wants to roam onto your network, and that's a really critical thing. So unlike Helium, we are building a mobile network from the ground up with the right network core, with the right, IPX interconnects, with all of the features that mobile network operators expect. And so this difference of cluster-based deployments, true mobile network backend, a token emissions schedule that we think can carry us for many years without having to issue new tokens. We think these are all really important differences between us and Helium. And by the way, I think Helium really is great. And I think, they rightly got a whole bunch of money, and I think they are going to eventually build a really great network. And right now they're sort of an MVNO, they're sort of reselling T-Mobile service. And I think over time, they're going to learn from us and from others and build a real network. But right now, we are sort of the, if you will, kind of the real network engineers in the room, building out this kind of focused coverage, and with a business model of reselling that to the operators in a way that so far Helium has not really been successful at embracing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know you mentioned a little bit about the deployment strategies and having these professionals kind of set this up. What is XNET's plan to deploy its wireless network? Like, is there a strategy behind it? What kind of calculations or things in the back end are you using?
No. That's a really great question. So if you want to see our network right now, you can go to explorer.xnetmobile.com and check it out. And we can, I'm sure, drop in that as a link. And you can see the live state of our network. But if you go to our map and you zoom in, let's say on Manhattan or San Francisco, or look around Los Angeles or Houston, what you're going to notice, first of all, are these blue zip codes where we actually say, hey, if you deploy here, you get rewards. So again, kind of focused areas of coverage. And then you're going to see some gold and silver hexes. And these are the areas which we've identified are of highest value, not because we, licked our finger and stuck it in the wind, but because we have access to carrier-based network planning tools that actually will show you down to the floor of a building in Manhattan how much the coverage sucks there and precisely in which bands. And by the way, the carriers themselves also have access to these tools. They know just how much their coverage sucks. They still lie to you and show you these beautiful maps of perfect coverage across the US. It's entirely BS, right? They know they have huge problems, especially in these higher frequencies, especially in 4G, 5G, and so forth, right? So we have those tools. We say, hey, kind of everybody sucks here. And this chunk, like right around the Mission in San Francisco, you'd think like heart of Silicon Valley should be freaking awesome, right? Tons of data capacity. Nope. Go there, you go to Dolores Park, pull out your phone. You might have bars, but are you making a call? I don't know. If you're trying to stream video or have a FaceTime, you're going to be in trouble, right? So we know where those zones are. We've identified them. We set up our incentives for both, enthusiasts and for our professional deployers to cover those areas. And I wish I could name names, but we're actually, in a conversation with a household name cable company here in the US to do a pilot in San Francisco. We're actually in a commercial agreement negotiations with another household name company, mobile network operator, to basically turn on service for them. So also probably starting in San Francisco, although Houston and New York will also be at the top of the list there too. So we know there's huge demand here, right? There's no question about product market fit. We just have to get our equipment out there, have to get it turned on, and complete some of the interconnects. But within months, we expect there to be some really exciting announcements around not just these deals, but actual data on these networks and actual money coming in from these deals.
Awesome.
Super cool stuff.
In terms of service, what are some of the performance that you guys are I know you're going to help these kind of spotted areas to make sure that there's coverage in those areas, but is there certain performance standards that you guys are keeping yourselves accountable for, or what is that selling point to those telcos, and maybe some people are going to be viewing this, what is the selling point there?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? Let's say you happen to be in the heart of Silicon Valley, as I am right now, and you pull out your phone and it says, 1 bar. Almost anything is going to be better than that, right? So, but we're not going to build kind of crappy, mediocre coverage. We're using CBRS technology, which is a very modern, technology, using eNode Bs and soon, which are the 4G equipment, and soon eNode Gs, which are the 5G equipment. And so we're going to be able to provide you a absolutely first-rate, 40, 50 megabit plus, wireless link directly to the device that you have in your pocket right now, right? And even more importantly, you won't have to change your carrier. You'll be able to stick with AT&T, T-Mobile, whomever, because they will interoperate with us. And the way we're managing that, for those people who are really geeky about this, right? We're working with so-called aggregators. There's 2 big ones in the US. There's Cineverse and Bix. They're both in a very similar business. They both provide so-called IPX gateway connections, which is connections back to the rest of the telco system. It doesn't run on the internet, by the way, folks. It has its own back end, right? And they aggregate roaming agreements. So basically, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish, Comcast, others, they all have deals with these aggregators. And then if you can provide service to the aggregator takes your network along with everybody else's and then resells it to these other folks, right? And that's how those connections are made. So anyway, again, this is all sort of deep inside baseball in terms of how the deals are done. But the quality of the connection is awesome. It is exactly what you would expect from the very best, modern communications technology, because that's what it is. We're deploying the very latest technology. And this is going to give you awesome bandwidth for whatever it is that you want to do.
And in terms of lifetime for these devices, since people are buying these devices and operating them for you, is there an expected update for these? Because I know these, and I heard a lot of stories about, for example, Helium, the actual nodes not working properly, or these devices are not properly. What is the lifetime certain support
No.
is provided?
That's a really great question. So when Helium, and by the way, again, we think Helium is great, but when they launched, I would say one of the mistakes they made is they were basically hey, we've got this really cool idea. Anybody who wants can kind of make our radio technology for us, right? And so there would be sort of open source hardware, which is a beautiful idea. And people would make Helium, equipment, and it would all be, not Helium branded necessarily, but, Bobcat or whatever equipment, and it would all be good. That's not what we're doing here. We are working with the folks who actually build professionally private LTE and carrier grade equipment. Bicells is one of our biggest partners on this stuff. They make the stuff that is out there in the world. It's going to last for years and years and years, right? We also work with Blink, another great company that makes wonderful carrier-grade equipment, right? We will probably pick up other additional manufacturers, but again, for these radios, we're talking about gear that is designed If it's an outdoor radio, if it's like one of our professional radios, these things are designed to operate outdoors for like a decade, right? And the thing is, you don't have to worry about, like that kind of, I don't know, going out of style or something like that, because here's the thing, wireless communication standards last for a really, really long time. You probably have equipment, installed in or near your home that up until very recently was operating like a 2G or 3G network because from like 20, 30 years ago, right? And by the way, 4G is going to be around for a very long time because 5G only has a tiny little build out. So if you actually invest in this equipment, that equipment in terms of the radios, that's going to be valid kind of almost forever. And of course, that's also something that we can upgrade by means of over-the-air, firmware updates and things like that. So an investment in this equipment, and this carrier grade, equipment is something that we think is going to be a good plan. And certainly, we're depending upon that equipment continuing to work because we're incentivizing people to go and buy it and operate it for us. And so if it doesn't work, it's going to be a big problem for us as well.
I'm curious, with the XNET token, is it a inflationary token? Is it mintable, so you're increasing the supply, or is it an instance where you have X amount of tokens locked that you will be diluting over a period of time?
Yeah, great question. So we looked at many different models for XNET tokenomics, and initially I had this like really cool minting model where as you mine, you would get some tokens, and some tokens would be sent to the XNET Foundation for their treasury, and some tokens would be sent to the folks validating you and all this stuff. And I could prove that it was all going to be like, in the long run deflationary, blah, blah, blah. And my colleagues looked at me and like, Rich, you might have a math background, but this is way too effing confusing. So what we decided to do, we've just pre-mined 24 billion tokens. About a third of them are assigned to the operator pool, and those will be basically, think of them as being locked until they're actually emitted through providing service or validating service. Mm-hmm. About a third are in the hands of the foundation. And although we haven't finished the process figuring exactly how that governance works, but basically the foundation's ability to access those tokens is going to be gated by basically the operating size of the network, right? So the foundation can't just spend like a drunken sailor early on, even if they wanted to, which they don't. And then about a third are for insiders and investors, right? And so that's kind of how we've broken it down. And but really importantly, to put data on our network, you have to take our XNET token, right, which is an ERC20 token on Polygon, fully validated. You can go there and check it out on the Polygon Scan blockchain explorer, and then that gets converted into a intermediate form, which is a data ticket. And the only reason for that is because there's different markets where data is basically worth a different amount. But also, these data tickets, think of them as like cell phone minutes that expire, right? Once it gets converted into that form, it's use it or lose it, right? And then those get burned to produce data, and then new XNET are minted. Now, this is really important because here's the thing. You can't pre-mine these data tickets. They have to be converted from XNET relatively soon before they're used, which creates a constant demand for XNET, constant currency burn, right? Because to put that XNET data on the network, the XNET mobile network operator company, this is distinct from the foundation, the company, by the way, doesn't own any XNET. That may sound really weird. Where does it get the XNET? Because it's got to put data on the network, right? It actually buys that from the market, right? Again, creating this constant currency demand. And where does it get the money? It gets the money from the telcos, and we're committed to taking 40 cents of every dollar. 40 cents of every dollar from these mobile network operators that come in to buy XNET and burn it into data, thus to create this flywheel that turns. So which means that over time, XNET is deflationary, right? And of course, there's an emissions rate, how much XNET gets mined versus how much gets burned and all that, and that will ultimately be controlled by the DAO. But we've set it up such that, we think that, about 40% of XNET is going to basically be burned, if you will, to unlock the remaining 60% of the token. And our investors, like our insiders, are going to be locked up for long periods of time. So the actual circulating supply of XNET is pretty constrained and is likely to remain constrained for years to come.
What are the current challenges that XNET is facing? I know this is like a really this could be a deep answer, this could be a short answer, but like, what are like maybe top 3 challenges that you're addressing on the day-to-day? I know you're working super hard with your team. I'm in your guys' Discord. I learn a lot. I try to learn as much as I can around these decentralized wireless networks. And I just want to hear from the man himself.
Hey, look, I would love to tell you that, oh, there are no challenges. We just totally have this. Realistically speaking, things can always go wrong in business, right? There are challenges, but let me tell you what's not a challenge, right? The fundamental core technology is not a challenge. It's known science, right? We've chosen a underlying blockchain, unlike Solana, for example, that keeps going down every 10 minutes.
Right.
That actually seems to be pretty solid, right? So I'm not worried about Polygon just going and effing off for 18, 20 hours because it forks and no one can figure out why, right? So I think that's pretty solid. I'm our lead blockchain engineer. I've been super conservative about our contracts. So all Open Zeppelin reference contracts and so forth, trying to do the minimum that we actually need to do to make everything work. So again, there could be challenges there, but we think we're being super conservative there, right? In terms of hardware, what happens if our suppliers can't provide us hardware? Well, that's why we always have more than one major supplier, right? I'm never going to do a sole sourcing deal. And they're all global scale companies that can actually meet our demands. In terms of business partnerships, like, one of the big questions early on in XNET is like, we had all these great ideas, but would anybody do business with us, right? Well, guess what? We have great partners. We're working with Sky Packets, for example, in New York City, who are helping us to deploy our equipment. They're really excited. We're in discussions with a household name institution in New York that has over 92 locations, which I wish I could tell you what it was, about deploying our equipment there because they also have a mission to connect the unconnected, right? We're working with a great partner, in Houston right now, Zeppelin, who is a big investor in our equipment. They're helping us build this thing out. They love us and we love them, right? Again, wish I could tell you some names, but we've got these household names like this MSO and MNO who we're in discussions with right now. So I don't mean that we can't screw it up. We could. And by the way, in business, execution is always the final boss, like it always is. But really what it comes down to is that we have to execute. We have to make sure we've got enough money coming in to keep the wheels turning. We have to not mess it up in terms of screwing up the technology or whatever. And we need to listen to our community, right? And that's been a big thing for us, is really trying to engage with our community and listen to them, because we've learned so much from our community. And we want to make sure that we keep doing that, because we know that we might get it wrong a little bit, but the community is really helping us course correct. So I think if we do all of those things, I don't think it's guaranteed, but I do think we're in really good shape to make this work. Because honestly, I think by the end of this year, we'll have proven out like every major kind of proof point that we need. And at that point, it's going to be a scaling play, right? Which is where you love to be.
In terms, lastly, like just want to know in terms of roadmap announcements, things that you guys are largely working on just to get our audience excited, get your community excited. What are some biggest announcements coming up, or things that really truly
yes,
hard work?
yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, I wish I could tell you right now, you should expect to hear, within the next, I would say 30 to 60 days, some really exciting announcements from us around commercial pilots and commercial agreements. With companies whose names you already know, right? So that's a thing. We are in progress right now getting our core, like initial 3 clusters built out in San Francisco, Houston, and New York. So we're going to you're going to start to see a bunch more radios coming online soon in those locations, deployed by our professionals. And also, I mean, look, I don't want to like tease too far into the future, but I will say that the things I'm telling you about right now are absolutely in progress. And again, I think we're working with this wonderful tribe here in California. I'm hoping that we will be able to officially announce, like actual working coverage on the reservation. By the way, not just with CBRS, which of course is exciting, but they have access to band 41 licensed spectrum. And that's something else that's coming up for us, because CBRS is a great place to get started, but we are looking to partner with organizations that actually have licensed spectrum or priority access licenses in CBRS. And our ability to prove that we can operate there is actually going to be super valuable and also super exciting, because that will give us an edge over projects that simply have access only to the CBRS spectrum.
What is the band 41? Can you just elaborate a little bit on what is
Yes.
that?
So the radio spectrum has been completely arbitrarily chopped up into bands by the ITU, this International Telecommunications Union. And I think as the band numbers go up, basically the frequency is going up. And higher frequencies act a little bit more like light. It tends to be very kind of straight line and create shadows and so forth. Low frequencies tend to bend around corners and so forth. Band 41 is, relatively speaking, low frequency spectrum usable by the phone in your pocket today. It's really great for rural remote connections. It goes a long ways, but the bandwidth is not quite as high. Band 48, starting about 3,500, is really great spectrum for these kind of shorter range, higher bandwidth connections. And by the way, that's what 4G and 5G is all about, is like these small cells and so forth. And then there's even higher frequency spectrum still. And those higher frequencies are really most appropriate, again, for these kind of very short range connections. So what we've seen over time is a kind of increasing band numbers, if you will, as we move towards smaller and smaller cells that are really about, higher and higher bandwidth. But band 41 is super useful because, again, if you want to do rural remote connectivity, it's one of the best places to be. And tons of this country and also in other places around the world require exactly that kind of connectivity. And the XNET Foundation's mission is to connect everybody. And so it's a great asset to have. And by the way, also, there's a lot of money from state and local and federal governments to support rural remote connectivity. So it's not just us, doing the right thing, but we also think there's a solid business case, if you will, for why we should be investing there as well.
Awesome. I think it's really cool, the business model that you guys have worked out. That sounds like it's, is looking very good. And incorporating a token into that, we know firsthand that's a very tricky thing to do. And so it's cool to see how you guys have implemented that.
Well, the thing is, here's the deal, folks. There are very few businesses that are really kind of reliably recession-proof, right? Mm-hmm. Wireless connectivity and mobile networks are one of those businesses. And again, big companies that have a lot of legacy, stuff and really expensive cost structures still have 30% margin in this space. What I want to do is I want to provide you awesome connectivity and a serious potential revenue share in a really great business, right? And that's something that we're very excited about, is this possibility of doing this whole play where we get to say, for every dollar I take from AT&T or T-Mobile or Orange or whatever, 40 cents goes to all of you, right? We can become partners in this really awesome business. And you can say, hey, connectivity sucks over where I live. I'm going to make it better. And I'm going to make it better not just for me, but for everybody around me, right? So we think this is this kind of collective approach to fixing connectivity, to spreading the wealth, and that's again why we think that crypto is so critical to this, because it's not just the token in terms of a unit of value, it's also governance. And and I have plans for how all this works, and a separate governance token for the foundation, which would probably take way more time than we've got. But let's just say that we're really excited about this. We're really committed to this as a DY token-based project, unlike, say, Pollen, who just kind of exited the room.
Sure.
We are in it to do that, and that's why we hope all of you will join us.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to close with before we wrap this up here?
No, I just say this has been so much fun. It's been such an awesome ride, and we've been learning so much. I came into this feeling like I had a pretty good handle on crypto and so forth. I've been learning so much by going to events. I was just at ETH Denver. It was amazing. Oh my God, I have to go back. In fact, next year I want XNET to provide connectivity ETH Denver, because it totally sucked.
Nice.
There, except for the Wi-Fi down in the basement for the Buildlore network. But yeah. So anyway, we love the community. We love what we're doing. We'd love you to join us, and you should go find us on Twitter. I am R DeVaul, RDEVAUL on Twitter, and you can find the main project XNET_mobile on Twitter. And if you go to XNET_mobile on Twitter, you'll find a link tree to take you to every place else, our Explorer, our shop, everything.
Yeah,
so,
we'll make sure to put all those links in the description for everyone watching here, Richard DeVaul, thank you so much for coming on again. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Evan.
It's always great to see, real tangible uses of blockchain that, really affect consumers.
Yeah. And we think that if we can prove that this really works, this could be, I think, one of the first projects that really, leverages a real world problem to bring real world value. And so we think this could be one of the first real prototypes for kind of bringing blockchain into the lives of folks beyond just the DeFi, which is great, of course. But and if we do this with XNET, we think that there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff in, for example, in renewable energy that's going to come along here. That might come along in the space of car sharing or transportation. We just think there's so much that you can do with crypto in the real world, and we're really excited to be, part of that solution space.
For sure. Yeah, well, look forward to following you guys in the future. Once again, thank you so much, Richard. It's been great to have you. And yeah,
thanks, folks.
Yeah, make sure you guys are checking out the description for all those links. Leave a comment with any suggestions on guests we should have in the future. Share any thoughts on this episode. And
definitely come join us on our Discord too. It's going to be one of the links. Come jump in, let us know what we're doing right, doing wrong, and that will be fantastic.